there, emerging expat. You're tuned in to Let's Move to Portugal. I'm Victoria from Expats Everywhere's podcast, and I have the distinct honor of bringing you, YouTube travelers, and our resident of Portugal experts, Expats Everywhere's Josh and Kalie. Each week they'll inspire, they'll educate, and they'll accompany you on your journey to Portuguese residency. This week on Let's Move to Portugal, Wendy discusses her journey of moving to Portugal from Alaska, the decision-making process behind choosing Portugal, the challenges faced during the transition, and ultimately, why she decided to return to America. Stay tuned to find out more.
Hey, expats and travelers alike. Welcome back to the Expats Everywhere Presents Let's Move to Portugal podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Kalie. How you doing?
Why am I co-host?
Well, I'm a co-host.
Okay, I guess we're both co-hosts, not
absolutely.
Like a leader and a secondary.
Yeah.
I'm doing well. I think that the winter colds have caught up with us.
We finally got it.
Yeah.
Well, we got it from our daughter, Valencia.
Yeah.
But.
Well, that always happens, right? Kids at school and they bring something back. But I think, normally I get the sniffles every winter, and this has actually been a pretty good one. So I'll have months of sounding stopped up.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm not, it's been pretty good so far.
Not so bad. Okay. So if you're new here, thank you for joining us. We hope that you enjoy the next, let's say 50-ish minutes of the podcast episode that we have for you today. We like to start off with the introduction from our lovely producer, Victoria. And then we move into this time where we catch you up to speed on what's happened over the past week. These episodes that we produce are not episodic. Is that the word? You do not have to listen to them sequentially. However, we do speak sequentially whenever we do these weekly welcomes, which take, anywhere between, let's say 7 and 10 minutes to do, as Kalie usually laughs at me, because they're never 5 minutes anymore. We have so much to say about what's happening in our world. But today's episode, we're going to talk to an expat who repatriated, and we're going to talk about her story on why she moved back to the U.S. from Portugal and what her future plans are, because things have changed for her and she might move abroad again. So before we do all that, what's been happening for you, Kalie? I know, but let the listener know.
I know. So I guess it's kind of a milestone, a family milestone for us recently.
Yeah, I would say that.
Went on my own trip without Josh and Sia by myself, a solo trip to London. If you follow us, then you know that we go to London a lot because we're Arsenal supporters. So we were able to get tickets to the games. We have a few friends there, so we can see them.
Yeah.
So we're in London a lot. So this time, though, only one ticket was available.
Yes.
And since Josh, I guess a couple months ago, you went.
Yes.
During the week, it was like a week game.
I think it was in
Champions
October.
League.
Yeah.
So Josh was like, "You should go," and I was like, "Oh, I don't know. How's it going to be? Are you going to survive?" Well, I left for a couple nights. I'm back. And they've survived. So.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I didn't have to do while you were gone was laundry, thankfully.
I've noticed. I'll get going on that after we record this.
Yeah. But I mean, it was 48 hours basically that you were gone.
Yeah.
So that was the only thing I didn't have to do. Everything else, I picked up the slack on.
You did a great job.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. Our daughter survived. So I didn't have to give her too much screen time. So that was good. But yeah, so apart from you going to this soccer match, which has its connections to Portugal in two ways, really. One is at the beginning of this season, we joined a supporters group called Arsenal Portugal, and it's the official supporters group of Arsenal, the football club that's based in London, but they have
supporters all around the world, clubs, like
world.
Official clubs, right?
Yeah, and there's a group here in Portugal. We're not quite 100 people strong yet. However, because we're an official group, we get ticket access. So that's how we have our ticket access to these games. So if you like the EPL, check to see if your favorite club has a supporters club here in Portugal. I imagine the big clubs do.
Yeah. But honestly, even if it's not soccer related, this is a great way to meet people.
Yeah.
So we have a passion for soccer, and we've been able to meet a lot of Portuguese who hold the same passion because we support the same club.
Yeah.
So we've been to different places around Portugal. We've met up with them. I actually met with a girl who lives in the Lisbon region. She had the other ticket, so I met with her in London to watch the game and got to know her a little better. So it's a great way to meet. Most of the people in this group, at least, are Portuguese, but there are some other nationalities in there as well. But this is what I highly recommend. If you have a hobby or you're interested in something,
search and find like what groups are around in the area that you are
Yeah.
and get connected that way, because you get to do something that you really enjoy with other people. And it's a great way to meet people.
Yeah. Okay. One thing I want to mention about what's happening kind of in this past week, there was a video that I would say for kind of the videos on YouTube about Portugal went, and not ours, went semi viral from a content creator who's a little over 100,000 subscribers strong. He does a lot of more political commentary and talking about kind of world events. He came to Portugal. He was down in Lisbon for a little bit of time and then came up to Porto. And he was following what was happening with the Chega protests. I don't know which way he leans. I don't think that matters. But what he did is he covered it very boots on the ground, and spoke to several Portuguese people that were protesting in these marches. Now, I bring that up because this morning when I was looking at the YouTube comment section, someone had said in the comment section that there have been a lot of protests recently in Lisbon and Porto, like anti-immigration protests. And I found that really interesting because I wonder if there's some sort of, and this is based on this person's message, they didn't seem like they were living in Portugal. Because they referenced at the end of the comment that they visit regularly to visit family and friends. So anyways, I found this really funny because these two videos that Wesley posted were in the past like week or 2 weeks. And the actual protests themselves occurred, I think it was back in like late October or November, because we walked through Aliados, which is the center, downtown, old city of Porto. We walked through there and saw this protest as we were actually going to an event with other foreigners, watching a South African versus Wales rugby match. So all that to say, like, I wonder if what they were commenting on was just the fact that there were these videos out there from literally several months ago, which they probably didn't realize. Do you feel any anti-immigration or anti-foreigner sentiment here in Porto?
No,
we can't comment on other places because we don't live everywhere.
Right. And honestly, like, okay, we don't know much about Chega and we don't vote, but from what I've seen, and when you actually listen to them talk, it's not that they're anti-immigration, it's that they're for legal immigration. So I think that there's been a little bit of an issue all around Europe and Portugal with illegal immigration. And so, like, what can they be doing as a country to keep their culture, I guess you could say. So as far as that goes, I don't think we necessarily have to be scared about the immigration side of things. Like, it's not like they're going to be, not letting anyone in anymore. I don't think anywhere, like barely anywhere in the world does that, right? No foreigners can come in. But as far as like day-to-day life, walking around, well, for one, I would say, I don't think that there have been, quote unquote, a lot of these like, protests. And they're so peaceful. I would say this too, like used. Sometimes when we say protests, like they have to be approved by the government, and they're police escorted and they're peaceful. They're peaceful protests. So they're just exercising their right to speak, which is good, but they're not doing anything crazy. But to say that there's a lot, not at all. I mean, it happens. Like you see different ones that will have, throughout different month, but to say a lot, I would say no, not at all.
This was the exact reply I had in the comment. I was like, what is a lot to you? Are we talking daily, weekly, monthly, or one every couple months? And because if one every couple months is a lot to somebody, it is hardly felt by me, at least.
I think we also have a responsibility too, if we're not in that location, to be careful what we say about like, I've seen that there are a lot of protests in Porto, for example, but if you don't live in Porto, then just be careful about saying that stuff because it could scare people. It could be a misrepresentation of what's happening. So just kind of being smart about how we comment on that stuff. But as far as like, since we live in Porto, saying it's a lot or feeling an anti-immigration from the people, not at all.
No. I don't feel like over the past 4 years that we've lived here, we've been treated differently.
No.
So, yeah. Okay. So moving on from that, do you have any updates in like what's happening with immigration?
No, I mean,
nothing new.
Nothing too crazy. Yeah. Nothing new really, honestly.
We're planning a video where we have a lawyer bring up some things that they know is kind of coming down the pike.
Yeah, I mean, IMA is trying their best.
You can use both, I think. I always hate that phrase. And then I just stuck myself into using it.
I just was blowing right past it. You should just
Thanks.
let it go.
Yeah.
IMA is trying their best to
All right,
catch up
Elsa.
and do stuff. And so they're kind of prioritizing in different locations of how they can help with the backlog. And a lot has to do with like if you've been here and you haven't, like it's a renewal or the golden visa and you don't have your residency or family reunification. These big things, it's like you're allowed to be in the country, but you don't have your papers. So like you're kind of stuck. They are really working hard on trying to be better at this. So yeah, let's see. I mean, good for them. I do think they are trying. So I guess that's a little bit of an update. And that's what, when we have a lawyer on, he's going to discuss a bit more about that as well.
Yes. Okay. So in this episode, we talk with Wendy, who discusses really her cultural immersion through football, through food and drink, through, intentionally trying to learn Portuguese. She herself has an education background, former principal. So she has her head wrapped around like the way curriculum should be when it comes to learning. So that we kind of bring up. But the football aspect, if you're not a football fan, neither was Wendy.
Yeah.
Wendy realized that she would probably be best served getting into the culture by showing some interest in football. And it grew on her for sure. Ted Lasso was a part of that. I will say that. Ted Lasso, the TV show, was definitely a part of that. But then there was also the food and drink aspect. She and her partner were, let's say, retired. I wouldn't call it semi-retired. They were retired. And they decided to make like a morning routine or at least weekly routine where they would go out and they would have either a coffee or a glass of wine or beer out and just be like among the locals that were also doing that. And they got to witness some really fun cultural things. So we reflect on that.
Yeah, that's good. But then unfortunately, she had to leave Portugal and go back to the US, her home country, which I think that this is really important information because we need to be aware that sometimes you make a move and life happens and things change. And it's okay to go somewhere else, go back to your home country. Just because you move doesn't mean like, this is it, I'm done. Like, this is where I'm going to be like the rest of my life or whatever it might be. Like, we thankfully have the flexibility to move around if we need to.
And if you move back to your home country, it's not as if you failed. Like you've gone out, you've tried, you've probably learned a lot and you've taken that back to wherever you went back to. I think the one thing that I really enjoyed about the second half of this interview is digging into the why behind she left. And I feel like despite all of like the noise that we heard probably about a year ago, all the Americans are moving back to the US or leaving Portugal, I think is the phrase it was. I think her reason is the most common reason that not only people leave Portugal, but people end up moving back to their home country. So I would say that's the part that you should really hone in on and listen to within her story and figure out, will that be you?
Yeah.
And you might not be able to mitigate that anyways, and you just have to live your life. So
yeah, let's get to it.
On to the show.
All right, but before we do that, let's talk about this week's sponsor, Green Ocean Global Advisors.
Yes, we always recommend, no matter where you are in the moving process, to get your finances in order. So that's in your home country and then the country that you're moving to.
And speaking about homes, what if you sell your house before leaving or do it after? What are the capital gains implications like? Well, a financial advisor will be able to walk you through this type of thing.
And what about distributions? Maybe you have a 401k or a pension and you need to figure out how much you should be drawing from for the lifestyle that you're going to have.
Now, you can use this link in the description section below to talk to John from Green Ocean Global Advisors to see if he's a fit for you. You'll have a free 15-minute consultation just for being an Expats Everywhere listener. So you can use that to get your free 15 minutes. Click the link in the description section below. Now, on to the show.
Wendy, what is up, my friend? It is so good to see your face.
I got you.
I'm really pumped to have this chat with you because you're someone that both Kalie and I really admire, you and Eric, your partner, and we are so thankful for kind of the energy that you brought to the Porto dynamic and to our lives. And we wish you were still here, which we'll get to.
Couldn't agree more.
On down the road in this podcast episode. But how you doing? Tell us a little about yourself. What's kind of your background and why you decided to move to Portugal?
Fantastic. Well, things are great. We are currently living in Tucson, Arizona, and loving it, especially the sunshine. Coming from Alaska, my background is we lived in Alaska for 35 years, both worked there, retired, and then moved to Portugal. We both wanted to live overseas or just out of the country, just to have that experience, and had planned to do that for many, many years. And finally, once we retired, had the opportunity to do it. So we moved to Portugal, and boy, that's a long story how we ended up back here. I don't know where you want me to start.
Well, I mean, I guess we're kind of starting at the beginning, where it's been nearly 3 years since you moved to Portugal. You moved in January of 2022. And
did.
Our meeting was very much, you sent us a message saying, it's thank you for the information that you've given us and the help that you've given us. But you did it in such a funny way where Kalie and I, like, we had to respond immediately and get to know you and Eric as people, and we knew we'd be friends. But do you remember that? Do you remember sending that message?
I do actually. You know, Eric wanted to move to Medellin.
Okay.
My dream was always to live in Paris. So we had a pretty significant gap there to kind of bridge to figure out where we ended up. And we explored lots of different countries. And part of our research was Eric discovering you guys on YouTube. And so grateful for all that you do through this content. And yes, reached out to you guys. And boy, that was a huge bonus for us, and such good information. And ultimately, it's a huge part of why we ended up choosing Portugal.
Ah, amazing. Well, okay. So for the listener, for the viewer,
yes,
Eric and Wendy ended up in the very first apartment that Kalie and I lived in. Now, did you know that was like the apartment that we lived in before selecting it, or after?
No.
Like you arrived and you're like, wait, this looks familiar.
Well, I think what happened, gosh, I don't remember exactly, but we had no idea. Of course, we worked through the company living that, and we had gotten that information from you. And yes, we ended up in the same apartment, and so many videos that you guys had done from that sofa in that same spot. And Eric, that's to his credit. He said, okay, we have to do this, and we'll pretend to be Josh and Kalie when we send them the video. So anyway, super fun, us saying, let's get moving, and I'm Kalie. And yeah, we had a ball doing it. It was super fun.
If I can dig that video out, I'm going to attach it to the end of this one so people can see it as an outtake, because it was amazing. You guys were one-hit wonders, and we thought that you'd eventually start a YouTube channel and give us a run for our money, but
no chance of that. No chance.
Okay,
yeah,
so going back to like the initial decision about Medellin, Paris, let's go to Portugal. What were some of the commonalities between those two places, and how like we converged into Portugal and Porto?
I don't know that there were a lot of commonalities, quite frankly. And you can see we ended up in Portugal, so who did the most giving on that decision. It certainly wasn't me. Eric is much more dynamic and looking for big adventures, and I'd been a Francophile my whole life since I was a little girl. So anyway, ultimately, like all people, I assume, making the decision, where do you want to go? When you have all the options in the world, we looked, for me, safety was a big one. And at the time, Portugal was second on the World Peace Index. And we looked at cost of living, so many, all the things that one really takes into consideration. What does it look like getting to and from that country, whatever that country? We looked at Croatia. We looked at all the countries in Western Europe, many countries in South America. And ultimately, it really came down to our heart just said, these are the places, these are the people, these are the cultures that we wanted to explore. Really, visas was a huge piece of it as well. As you know, Eric really wanted a second citizenship, a second passport. And even though lots of places say you can get citizenship there, as you know, that doesn't always happen. Even though it's available, many times it just never ever happens. And it was a viable option. And also living in Portugal gave us exposure and opportunities in all the Schengen nations and, all of Europe for the most part. So ultimately, that's what we ended up doing. And couldn't have been happier with our choice. Thrilled with it. It was a fantastic chapter.
Awesome. Well, you had to lay some initial groundwork after doing your initial research phase. So what were some of the steps that you took at the time to make your move?
Well, I had retired in 2019. Eric was retiring December 31st of 21, and our plan was get on a plane on January 1st, 22, which is what we did. So fortunately, we were in a great place where I had the opportunity and the time to do all the things necessary, getting the visas and all the paperwork associated with that. We also had a couple of homes we needed to liquidate. We had never been to Portugal before. Our plan was to go and do a little recon, but COVID happened. And so we knew we were going to sell everything we owned anyway. And Eric just said, doesn't matter that we haven't been there. Let's just go. And we took 2 suitcases apiece, sold everything else, and figured if this isn't for us, we can pack up those suitcases and go to another country, come back to the United States, whatever felt like it fit. So selling everything we owned, every stick of furniture. We took really just the clothes that not all the clothes we had, certainly. We just took clothes and
Eric took all the clothes
items.
he had. You had to leave 75% back.
I liquidated 3/4 of mine and all my shoes. So anyway, it was just a matter. It was selling homes. It was selling furniture. Everything went. And we learned real quickly that we aren't as attached to things as we thought we were. Things we had kept for, all of our lives that we thought were super important, like high school yearbooks. Turned out there's no place in a suitcase when you're headed to Portugal that a high school yearbook is going to make the cut. So anyway, that was very cathartic and a process that we really enjoyed and really taught us a lot about what kinds of things we are attached to. So
what you value, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
liquidated.
Well, I find that experience really valuable. Kalie and I have had to do it on several occasions, figuring out what to get rid of, what we want to store, who we can ask in our family to store the stuff there.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, I'm sure we've annoyed several family members over the years. They've been too polite to tell me.
To say.
So I find both you and Eric very relatable in the sense that your jobs weren't CEO of this company or doing this or that, like on a super high level, although you all are both excellent in your fields. You rose up through working in the education industry to be a principal, Eric, a police officer. But it seemed like you always had an eye on investing and I guess accumulating assets would be a way to say it. You're talking about like selling houses. Most people don't think of selling houses, but a house. Were you a part of the FIRE movement, the Financial Independence Retire Early movement, or how did this all happen?
Yes. So actually, Eric has spent probably the better part of 2 decades acquiring real estate. We own multiple investment homes that we rent out in a couple different cities in the United States. And really, he's the lead on that. And quite frankly, we've been together for 6 years at this point. We've known each other for over 20, but the majority of those homes were ones that he purchased prior to us getting together. I have a couple as well. And now, since in the last 6 years, we've bought additional homes that are commingled. So
Yeah.
it's all a big picture, but it is an investment strategy that I believe in and that has served us well. The
Ditto.
homes that we sold were our personal 2 homes that were our personal homes. We kept all the investment properties when we moved overseas, and we have management companies that manage those. So we were pretty hands-off in terms of taking care of those things, which worked out fantastic too when we were overseas. So we just didn't have to deal with it very much.
Okay, because I was going to come on to that. So first, there's a kind of a 2-part question. Did you find the selling of your personal houses challenging in the lead up to the move? And then what were some of the challenges that you had for the listener that does have rental properties that wants to move abroad but still keep them? What are some of the challenges you found there?
Okay. I'm a box checker, a list maker. We try to make educated, informed, intentional decisions and adjust accordingly. And that's one of the tenets of our life and our relationship is we kind of have a plan and we anticipate that there will be some things where we have to adjust. When we decided we were doing this, it was just list making, and on that list was selling those 2 homes. And then we were checking boxes, and I did not find that particularly challenging. I wasn't attached to those homes, neither was he. And so that was not all that challenging, any more so than selling a piece of property is in any situation. When it came to the rentals and the investment property, those, I don't know how one could self-manage and live in the situation that we were living in. We have a fantastic management company that has quite a number of our properties, and then 2 other management companies that are doing fine for us in 2 other cities. Fortunately, they are very well equipped to really deal with everything that comes up, from make readies when a place is vacated to dealing with having renters move out unexpectedly or needing renters to move out. They collect rents. I mean, it's really, they're full service management companies. So there are a few things they contact us periodically for, usually via email when we were living overseas. And that was fantastic. There's no way, and we have self-managed before, but there's no way we could possibly have done that. And we don't have family that I would ask to do that. I would ask them to store some of my stuff, but I wouldn't ask them to manage a piece of property. So that was just not an option for us.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. We did have at one point in our living abroad journey, we had my sister who was managing the property, and it was okay, not great. She did great, but there are just challenges, and she's not a property manager. So by the time we found the right property manager, we have had a great experience. We went through 2 that were not so great, but then we found one that was great, and it's been amazing.
It is a challenge, and I think that most property management companies are okay, and then there are a handful that are fantastic, and we are really fortunate to have in Memphis a fantastic management company. So it makes a difference. It makes it a lot less stressful.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's jump to you've moved to Portugal. So again, this is the beginning of 2022. What are some of the initial challenges that you faced kind of getting acclimated to your new environment?
Well, the language, obviously, and we knew for over a year that we would be moving to Portugal, and we went in pretty hard studying the language on a daily basis. So I felt confident that I could mostly get my point across in Portuguese, and that turned out to be true. As anyone who's tried to learn a language and been immersed in it knows it's one thing to get your point across, but then when someone starts speaking back to you, often it's just, they're speaking fast. That was a challenge. And fortunately, moving to Porto, so many people speak English, and that was helpful, but definitely a language barrier. Learning to navigate a new system. I had lived in the same city for 35 years. And so I hadn't learned new streets. Where's the laundromat? I had never really used public transportation. And so just the day-to-day things, the grocery store, how does this work? Constant translation. I mean, every day was exciting and exhausting because every single thing is new. And again, we knew that going in. It's one thing to intellectualize it. It's another to live it.
Totally.
But we were excited about it. And so I think even though it was exhausting and confusing, we enjoyed all of it. And we also kind of committed to, we're going to do one thing a day. We can't do multiple things because it was just mentally exhausting. So if we did one, we got a bank transfer to happen. That was a huge success. We're not going to try to figure out the metro on that same day because it was just more than I wanted to take on. But the day-to-day living, it's exciting if you're prepared to have it be exciting. I think really your perspective is so important going into things like that, just knowing that everything is different. And in Portugal in particular, there's a lot of bureaucracy and the pace is slower, which turns out is one of the reasons that we wanted to be there, but also something that was just like,
drove you mad?
we just have to go, okay, this is the way it is. And things are just slower and not be upset by it. So really perspective going in, I think, is so important.
No, you're exactly right. I'm curious to know though, how long did you give it where it was okay to just like tackle one task a day? Like how long did you have to kind of do that?
I think probably 6 or 8 weeks, honestly, which sounds like a long time right now. But
no, I thought you were going to say longer.
No, but I think when you consider that every single thing you do is different, and going to the pharmacy. I mean, I could list every single thing we all do every day. Getting phones, really important stuff like getting my nails done and finding that kind of thing. So I would say it was probably a couple months. And once you feel comfortable with how do I use the ATM? Okay, I can add something. If I have to do the ATM today, then I can add one more thing because that would be the new thing. But and just allowing that to be the way it is, we also have the luxury that we weren't working. So, and I feel very privileged, and I know that's a position of privilege that we weren't adding that piece to trying to navigate our day-to-day. We weren't trying to make a living.
Right on. I think a fair amount of people are coming over retired, so they'll kind of have that same experience as you, and they'll be able to give themselves more time to learn the systems. And I agree with you. I mean, it was very early on when Kalie and I would say on our YouTube channel, if you can accomplish one thing a day, you're succeeding. And trying to take on too many tasks is just going to leave you frustrated. I think our audience, especially those that haven't had much experience with public transportation, would want me to ask you, how did you find Porto's public transportation and public transportation in Portugal in general?
So glad I get to answer this question. Fantastic is what I would say. It is, I kind of had prided myself in my life with, I can accomplish things, I can learn things, I want to know things, and I'm curious. Public transportation, I lived in Alaska. I just didn't there isn't a lot of public transportation, and I just didn't use it. And even when I traveled, I didn't use a lot of public transportation. We ended up I also don't like to be out of my comfort zone, which sounds strange, moving to another country where everything is out of your comfort zone. But it was a very intentional day that we went to figure out the metro. And quite honestly, such nerds. We watched every YouTube video there was, to include yours, where Kalie's showing people these are the trips and here's the lines and here's the map and here's what you do, so that when we did go, we at least had some idea what to do. The first day we went, I was so nervous walking to the metro station, and we didn't do anything that day. Our goal was to go there, look around, look at the maps, try to figure it out. And we left. We had no metro tickets when we left that first day. And then the next time we went, which was a couple days later, we were able to navigate the system. And of course, the Portuguese people are so lovely. And there are people who work there who helped us sort it out. And I will tell you, everything is immaculate and clean, and people are lovely and super helpful. We used the metro there all the time, and I absolutely loved it. I only rode the bus a couple times, mostly because it's notoriously late, which happens, but we loved the public transportation, and also the city is so walkable that, we did that as well. It was fantastic. We loved it.
Okay, awesome. And I think that's a glowing review. One of the critiques we often hear about Porto's metro, kind of in general, is the zones, the ticketing system for the different zones is confusing. Did you find it confusing? Did you ever have to go out of like the first standard 2 zones?
We did. We used we used it all the time. And I do think, I don't think it's that confusing, but it just needs a really decent explanation of what, you start in this zone, and anytime you cross a line, you're going into a next zone. These are what trips are. I think once you have the definitions of the verbiage, the vernacular, it's understandable, but I can see it. I can see why it's confusing for people, for sure.
Yeah, I think first-time visitors that don't take your approach of just like getting the lay of the land, figuring out what these terms are, they rock up, especially to Trindade Station, which is the central station where all the lines cross. And because there are several platforms and trains going in different directions, people get very confused. So
there's a lot happening there for sure. And if it's the first time or the 5th time you've been there, it can be overstimulating for sure.
Yeah, it can be. Okay, so that moves on from some of the early things that you talked about. You did talk about nails, getting your nails done. Did you find that difficult?
No, because
finding a nail lady.
Portuguese people are amazing. And the lady, when we went to Vodafone to get our new phones, like day 1 when we were there, I noticed she had beautiful nails. And so day 2, when we went back to do something else there, I asked her if she could give me the name. Not only did she give me the name, she called her nail lady, which was around the corner, set up the appointment for me, told me, the Portuguese people are really, from beginning to end users, they're so helpful. They just make sure that things are taken care of. So no, it turned out not to be all that difficult.
See, I think that's an amazing hack right there that I really want the listener to take notice of. If you see someone has done something successful that you need, ask them. Just ask them like, oh, I like your bag. Where did you get it? Or your nails look amazing. Your hair is phenomenal. Like, who cut your hair?
It was
ask
the same thing with the hairdresser that I found. It was exactly the same thing. And people are so helpful, and they really, truly just want to, for the most part, really just want to be helpful. And they were. It was fantastic.
Awesome. Did you find that, your kind of day-to-day things were all in a walking radius to where you didn't have to take public transportation much if you didn't want it? Because Kalie and I find like we're in a 15-minute radius of anything we need on foot.
Yes. I think that's true. I would agree completely with that. You do find one of the beautiful things that I looked forward to there was going to all the different stores. I had the olive store, and I had the place where I got my sour cream, and I had the olive oil place. And yes, you do end up finding that and we really took the metro to do things like go to FC Porto games, or if there was particular shopping we wanted to do that was further away than we wanted to walk. But yes, for the most part, we kind of stayed very central.
All right, you brought up FC Porto. We have to talk about it. We're old seatmates.
Yes.
As an American couple that doesn't have a lot of experience with European football, why in the world would you sign up for a season ticket package?
Oh my gosh. We were just, well, first of all, Josh and Kalie might have influenced that decision. We really were just dying to get more involved in the culture, quite frankly.
Okay.
And thank goodness for you guys and the community that you built, the meetups that you have. I would encourage anyone, go to those, because that's really how we met people. And for the most part, expats. And we really wanted more. We met some incredible people that I still talk to every day that we're friends with, but we really wanted to, what is a huge part of the culture where we live, and it's football, obviously. So we loved doing it, and it was all about really learning more about the culture there. And gosh, the energy there, so fun. We absolutely loved it, and we really miss it. And anytime we can see a game here when FC Porto is playing, Eric still has his jersey, and he wears his jersey, and we either go somewhere and watch it, or we're home watching it. So it's something that is stuck. We're really proud of, and we love doing. So thank you for encouraging us to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, I think you said it there. It's such a part of the culture that not doing it, you're not quite experiencing what it is to be in Portugal. Now, it doesn't mean that every single Portuguese person loves football. There are plenty of people that say that they don't follow it, or they don't really enjoy it, and they like other sports. Our landlord, for example, doesn't watch football, and he finds it so funny that Kalie and I are fanatical about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is such a part of the culture where even the people that don't follow it, they understand it, and they understand it's a part of the culture.
And it was so fun to, you would sit at cafes and watch, these lovely Portuguese men banter back and forth. And you knew they were talking about football, and you would pick up some words here and there. And that was fun to see how passionate they were about the sport. It was fantastic.
Nice. Let's jump into a little food and beverage, because one of the things that always had me cracking up is when I would scroll my Instagram and I would see you would post a picture of some random person's glass of wine or shot of aguardente. Tell us about that. Like, what was it about those moments that you wanted to capture in a photo?
Oh, that just fills my heart so much. I think there are little things when you go anywhere that are so indicative of the culture that you can miss. And something, I think food and beverages are so tied to cultures and community, and they're so specific. And I really just wanted to soak up those moments, those little moments. And I know it seems silly, but aguardente is such a huge part of some people's day, and
Not
the
my
wine. Yeah. My day would end really quickly, but if it was part of
It'd end
my
on the
day,
couch.
yes, I'd be sleeping. And essentially it's moonshine, and often not on the menu. And I just really wanted to take note and appreciate and share with my family back here in the United States those little things that that sometimes can be overlooked, but are so important in some people's days and lives, and are also very different than the culture that we came from. I know this is so odd. I posted on my Instagram many public restrooms, not inside the restroom, but just how different setups are, and it's so different than the United States that and people loved it. They were like, send more of this, whatever it happened to be, but just little things that you don't even think about that are just so much a part of the culture, and that's why it was important to me.
Nice. Okay, let's go on to learning the Portuguese language a bit, because you did take intentional steps to learn Portuguese. And what are some of the things that you did, and how do you think that the results were in the end?
Well, before we left the United States, I found a couple different programs. One is an online, fully, 90% auditory learning. This is not the way that I learn best. At least that's what I thought.
Pimsleur?
No, it's
Pimsleur?
called Michel Thomas. He was from Poland during the war, moved to France, learned French, and anyway, from there, learned multiple language. And it's you can purchase it on to be used on your computer. We had it on our phones. And it turned out that it was a fantastic way for us to learn that I would never have anticipated. I also did the standard, here's the book from the bookstore, where, you're doing some writing and learning the basic numbers, colors, months, some verb usage, that kind of thing. So we did that, and we're, again, very intentional about it and committed to it. And I did feel good when we got there that I was able to communicate to some degree with folks. And honestly, in comparison to some of our friends who were Americans that had been over there longer than us, I did feel like we had a little better handle on the language than they did. Certainly we were not fluent. And then while we were there, my second landlady is a professor at the university in history, and she connected me. We had a group of friends who all wanted to work on the language. So she connected me with an English teacher from the university who offered to do classes for us. And so I set that up. So we did those classes virtually, Zoom, a couple times a week with our friends. And that was just another opportunity. And it was fantastic because she was Portuguese. So we were really getting the language from someone who was Portuguese.
A point of clarification, I guess, on the virtual aspect. She was remote, but as a group, you all were together.
Yes, we all went to a friend's flat. I think it was twice a week. Maybe it was 3 times a week, set up with a computer. And yes, she was in her office at the university and occasionally at her house. So yes, that's the way that was happening.
Okay.
And
did you find that?
We were happy with it.
Yeah, you found that to be beneficial, that at least the students were in the same room and you could interact, or was that distracting?
Well, that crew, occasionally it was distracting, but no, I did. I think as an educator, I think all the ways that you're getting language are important and helpful. Some tend to be better than others. And unexpectedly, as I said, the complete auditory option that we had, I did not anticipate that being as good as it was. So yes, I think any opportunity you get is helpful. And we did things like every single day on Santa Catarina, there was literally the store is the body shop. There were these 2 lovely young Portuguese women who also spoke English. We went in there every single day. It was right around the corner from our house, and had a quick little conversation, a little bit in Portuguese and a little bit in English, and something that had happened the day before that we didn't quite understand, or a word we weren't quite sure how to use. We would go in and ask them. It was 2 minutes out of our day and their day, and they were lovely and they loved doing it. And so that was fun. Just taking every opportunity to learn the language.
That is so cool. I think that's awesome advice and an awesome tip, especially, hearing it from an educator, where it's beneficial to take in language any which way you take it in. Just take it in.
Absolutely. Yes.
Get those inputs, and then you're doing outputs because you're practicing when you can, in the form you can.
It's true.
So
and
that's
I
amazing.
Would say something that I really took to heart that you said when we were there and traveling together. I watched how much you tried to were speaking Portuguese, good, bad, or indifferent, if it was butchered or not, whatever you can do. I would just say trying to speak the language is so important. And I found that I was much more likely to take on a conversation with a Portuguese person than Eric was. And I finally was like, I need to let him speak the language, because I was doing it all the time and he was okay with that and a little less comfortable. So I just think it's so important to try and speak the language.
Awesome. Okay. So earlier you mentioned that you got connected with your, let me see how you put it, your second landlady's connection to be the teacher. So the first place you lived in, our first apartment, how long were you there? 6
months. We were there,
so you were there
6
for
months.
You signed a 6-month lease because at the time that's all that was required. And then you moved into this new place. Oh, did you move out early? It was a year, but you moved.
Actually what happened was for our visa, we had to have a year dialed in for our visa. So we had 2 places secured, I thought, secured.
Okay. And
so once we got there, I wanted to go lay eyes on the second place that we were moving in for the second 6 months. And it was a few blocks away, went there anyway, communicated with the landlord for that place. And he indicated that we did not have that place secured, that even though we had signed a lease, again, a box checker, I missed a box before we left, and he had sent an email that said we needed to pay however much it was. I missed it. And because we didn't pay, he rented it to someone else. Don't blame him, but just a difference in how things happen. I sort of would have expected an email from him saying, hey, this money was due yesterday. What's the deal?
Sure.
But his perception was, he said, I know that a lot of Americans are doing this. They just need the contract for their visa, but then they don't have any intention of actually moving in. And I thought that's what you did. Well, I was mortified. So anyway,
you don't want to be that. You don't want to be that girl.
No, not at all. So anyway, we ended up being able to rent from the second lady who was literally upstairs, and that guy connected us to our second landlady. He said, oh, I know somebody who has an apartment and it's just upstairs. And so that worked out fantastic.
Okay. So I don't remember catching that bit of the story. That's interesting. Okay. So how long were you there?
We signed a lease for 6 months, and we moved out a month early. So we moved out in November and our lease was through December. So we paid through December, but we left Portugal in November.
Okay. So arrived in January 2022, left in November 2022. We got to know what happened.
Yes.
Where did it go wrong?
It didn't go wrong. Nothing went wrong. As I was saying earlier, we make an intentional plan and an informed decision and then adjust accordingly. And when we moved over initially, the visa requirement had guidelines for how long we could be out of the country. About a month or 6 weeks after which was a factor in our decision about what country we moved to and those kinds of things, because we do have family, we have children, grandchildren, parents here that we wanted to come back and see. About 6 weeks after we moved over, those guidelines were changed and became more restrictive. So we could be out of the country even less. That was an initial okay, how's that going to go? But because it was a non-issue, we'd only been there a couple months, I wasn't worried about it. 6 months after we were there, I wanted to come back to the United States to see my kiddos. And Eric stayed back in Portugal. And that was fantastic. Had a great time. I went back, and again, this is about 6 months in, and I would say within a couple months of getting back, we started having conversations because things changed in our family. My daughter was now pregnant with our third grandchild. My father needed to move out of where he was living, and he needed a place to live, which was going to be with me. And Eric's father, his health started to decline as well. So some factors changed in our life in that year, and we started talking about how can we manage all of this. We really tried to be open to all the different options. I think sometimes people get hung up on there's one right answer. Either we stay here full time or we go back full time. And I also think it's a little bit that we absorb as Americans, and probably other cultures as well, that if it doesn't go exactly as planned, then it's failed. And I'm sure you're familiar with the term of failed expat, which always makes me smile, because for me, our lives are chapters. There's all kinds of chapters and opportunities, and we had the chapter there, and we were trying to figure out how can we modify this situation so that potentially we can have the best of both worlds. And spreadsheets were created for living there 6 months and here 6 months, and how can we stay inside the visa, and what if we have a house here and in the United States and a house in Portugal, and all the different comminglings and opportunities that they are to kind of mesh those things together. And what it ultimately came down to was we made the decision to come back because we had parents really who needed us. And again, I don't see it as anything but an incredible opportunity and chapter, both to be there and to come back. When we came back, my father moved in with us. He lived with us for the last 2 years and passed away last month. And what an incredible opportunity that was for me to spend time with him. I don't regret that at all. I don't lament the decision or the choice to move back to the United States. And I also think that when you're thinking about moving overseas or away from family in any capacity, really, it is one thing to intellectualize the challenges that might happen, to include the emotional part of missing your family. It's another thing to actually experience those emotions and go through all of those emotions. And even though you anticipate missing your family or someone needing you, it's different intellectualizing it than it is actually experiencing it. So I just think it's so important to leave yourself open to that. And again, it's about perspective, anticipating that there will be things and you might need to adjust, whether it's a big adjustment or it's just a little tweak. For us, it was a big adjustment to make the decision to move back to the United States, but I don't regret it.
No, nor should you. I mean, you got to experience 2 very, very precious years with your father.
Yes.
Not knowing what the future was going to be like when you made the decision to move back in November of 2022. But
true.
I mean, that's the way life worked out. And I think it worked out exactly the way it was supposed to. Not to sound cliche or anything, but I'm curious, you're talking about emotions with family members and not knowing, what that feeling of missing would be like, despite knowing what it could be like intellectually. What was that missing like when you spent the, let's say, 11 months, more or less, in Portugal? What were some of those things that you missed? Was it birthdays, or was it like a cuddle on a Saturday when you're watching the kids while your daughter's out doing stuff with her friends?
Such a great question, Josh. Just like you've done this before. I think for us, our communication was the same. I talk to my daughter every day. We FaceTime every day. I see the grandkids every day. Same with my son. My dad was a lot less interested in FaceTiming me on a daily basis, but I still had conversations with him that, and the frequency of that didn't really change when we lived in Portugal.
Okay.
I think getting your hands on those little humans, particularly our grandkids, but my own children, there's absolutely that day-to-day opportunity, missing the recitals, missing the birthdays, those kinds of things. And, you know, when it comes down to our lives, whether it's here or there, what I miss the most about Portugal is our people. It's there were, I could list a lot of other things, but the thing that is primary when anybody asks me, it's always our people. And the same was true for what we missed when we were in Portugal about the United States. I can give you a list of things that I missed, but it's really it's about the people. And that's different for everyone. How frequently you need to squeeze those babies is different for everyone. And the things that you don't anticipate missing, you know, that you intellectualize, oh, I'm going to miss the birthday, darn it. But it's you get to come stay at grandma's house for a couple nights this weekend and we're going to lie on the couch and watch a movie or whatever. For sure, it's the people. That's the part that was the hardest for us. And again, if we could have figured out how to make it work so we could be back and forth more often, you know, it's a cost to benefit ratio situation where you really have to weigh those things. You know, what can you tolerate? What's my tolerance? Okay, I can tolerate, 2 months, but I don't want to be gone any more than that. And for us, particularly with the grandkids, I saw them every 3 months of their life, even though they lived in Arizona and I lived in Alaska. Mm-hmm. Okay, when we stretched it out to 6 months, boy, that was beyond my comfort level. And with our visas, I couldn't come back any more than that because of the way the visas were structured.
Okay, I get it. So I'm curious to know, have you left the door open for possibly coming back to Portugal, figuring out a new arrangement, or moving abroad to somewhere else? Medellin, Paris, the world is still your oyster.
Yes, it's true. Absolutely we do. And we're coming back next month and we'll be in Portugal for a month. I think at this point, our compromise is we can be anywhere that we want to be for 90 days with our current passports. And I think that we've decided that works for us right now. Mm-hmm. It will always be on the table that we move back to Portugal or that we move somewhere else. Probably won't be Medellin. Don't tell Eric that. But yes, it's still, it was such an incredible chapter and I look forward to having another one. And it really is, I feel very, very fortunate because we do have the opportunity to do that if we want to. So yes, always on the table, anywhere in the world that sounds interesting, for sure.
Wendy, I think you already know the question I'm going to hit you with, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it because the audience is waiting for it too. At Expats Everywhere, we believe that living abroad transforms lives. How has living abroad transformed your life?
It has helped me learn so much about myself, about our relationship. I think it really has cemented, because of all those baby steps from selling everything you own to what do I really value that I'm getting rid of. It has helped cement and helped us figure out what's important to us. One of the things when we lived there was we were living in furnished apartments. And what I knew about myself, but really was cemented when I was living there, was I'm a nester. I want to make this my own. I want to buy my own furniture and my decor and set it up and make it cozy and make it feel like us. Eric, he's a hands-on guy. He does art, big 3-dimensional metal art, and he loves to build furniture. And we had no space for, we were living in a flat. And it became obvious that had we stayed, we were going to need to make some changes to our living situation because that's so core to who he is and is soul filling for him. So, in that sense, it helped us really realize all those little things about ourselves. And as importantly, getting me out of my comfort zone and just reminding me that, yes, you can figure it out. You can figure things out, all the new things, all the things that make you uncomfortable. You can move past that. And having done it over and over and over again, I think really helps you build some confidence in areas that you might not have been previously. And so, yes, our values, cementing really what those are. It's one thing, again, to think but then to live it and experience it. And now it's just so part of who you are that you can articulate it, I think.
Right on. And articulate it, you did. Wendy, I'm ridiculously excited to see you next month when you visit. Super
Yay.
looking forward to it. Can't wait to hang out.
Us too.
Share a glass of aguardent with each other.
Ooh, yeah. And have the night end.
Have the night end. Yeah. Thank you so much. Appreciate you sharing and opening up with Expats Everywhere. Thank you.
Anytime. Take care. We miss you.
Miss you too. Bye.
Bye.